That day, it was a moment I never thought would come, but there we were, too close to pull away. One touch, and everything changed. What I thought was a memory became a reality I couldn't escape. It had been 6 months since Ryan's accident. 6 months of grief that felt like an eternity, but the ache in my chest never subsided. I could still hear his voice, his laugh echoing through the empty corners of my apartment. Feel the warmth of his hand in mine whenever I closed my eyes. But every time I opened them, he wasn't there. It's funny how people say time heals all wounds. That's a lie. Time didn't heal me. It only made the wound deeper, a scar I could never erase. But one night, things changed. I was lying in bed, staring up at the ceiling, trying to sleep but failing as usual. The silence was suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat, pounding in the quiet, a constant reminder of the life that continued to move forward without him. And then, as if the universe had decided it was time, I drifted off. I woke up in a place I didn't recognize at first. A soft, golden light spilling through the windows, the air warm with the smell of vanilla and pine. It was familiar, yet strange. The bed I was lying on was large, far bigger than the one in my apartment. The sheets, silky and cool against my skin, felt like they belonged in a dream. I sat up, my heart racing in confusion, but then I heard it. His voice, low and warm, as if it had never left me. "Emily?" My breath caught in my throat, and I turned to the sound. There he was, standing in the doorway of the room, his familiar smile stretching across his face. Ryan. He looked exactly the same. Like the day I last saw him, right before everything fell apart. His hair was slightly tousled, his deep brown eyes full of life, and his lips curved into that reassuring grin I had always loved. I could hardly breathe. "Ryan," I whispered, hardly believing the word as it left my lips. "Is this... are you?" He chuckled softly, stepping toward me, the room's light casting a halo around him, making everything feel surreal. "Yeah, it's me. Don't freak out, okay? Freak out?" I couldn't even begin to process what was happening. He was dead. I watched him die. He was gone. And yet, here he was, as real as I remembered. I'm dreaming, right? I blinked rapidly, trying to wake myself up, but my fingers didn't feel like they were in a dream. I felt the coolness of the sheets, the weight of my body pressing into them. This felt too real. "This isn't real. You're not real." He sat down next to me, the mattress shifting slightly under his weight. His hand found mine, and for a moment, I felt that spark of warmth again. It was him. It's really him. "Relax, Em. You're not dreaming," he said softly. "I'm right here. You called me... called you?" My voice shook as I turned to face him. "I never... How can you be here?" "I never really left," he said, his smile softening as he looked into my eyes. "You've been dreaming about me, right? Every night?" I nodded slowly, my head spinning. Of course I had been. But this? This wasn't a dream. This couldn't be. But you're gone. You died, Ryan. I saw it." He took a deep breath and squeezed my hand, his eyes sad, but determined. I know. But I couldn't leave you. I couldn't leave you alone, not like this. You're the one who called me back." His words were like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean, I called you?" "You've been calling me in your sleep, Em." "I felt it. Every time you miss me, every time you're sad. I hear it. Your love. It brought me back." He leaned closer, brushing a lock of my hair from my face. "I've never stopped loving you." I didn't know what to say. My thoughts were swirling, like I was underwater. I wanted to believe him, wanted to reach out and pull him close, to feel his warmth again. But the rational part of me screamed that this was impossible, that he couldn't be here, that he couldn't really be here. But his touch, it was so real, so real. Am I dreaming? I asked again, my voice trembling. Ryan shook his head, a soft chuckle escaping his lips. If you want to think of it that way, sure. But I'm real, Emily. I'm here with you, and I'm never going to leave. I wanted to believe him more than anything in the world. But deep down, there was a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. This wasn't just a dream. This wasn't just some fantasy I had created in my head to keep him with me. This felt dangerous. But what could I do? He was here, in front of me, alive. The night passed quickly, too quickly. As we talked, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than he was letting on. But I didn't ask. I didn't want to ask. I was too afraid that the answer would take him away from me again. By morning, Ryan was gone. I woke up in my own bed, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. It had all felt so real, so vivid, and yet I was alone again. Except, as I reached over to my nightstand to grab my phone, I froze. There on the screen was a message from Ryan. "I'll see you tonight, Em. I'll always come back." I couldn't breathe. It was just the beginning, and I didn't know if I was ready for what was to come. The next few days passed in a haze, like I was walking through fog. I couldn't shake the feeling of Ryan's presence, even though he wasn't physically there. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still feel his touch, his warm breath against my neck, the softness of his lips brushing against mine. It wasn't just a memory anymore. It was as if he was still with me, just out of reach. I tried to convince myself that it was just grief, that I was still deep in the throes of my mourning. Maybe I was so desperate to see him again that my mind was playing tricks on me. That was the logical explanation, right? But it didn't feel logical. Not when things started happening. It began with the whispers. At first, I thought I was imagining it. It was the middle of the night when I heard it, so faint, like a breath, a murmur. My name. Emily. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I sat up in bed, listening closely, but the room was still, quiet. There was no one else in the apartment. It was just me. "Ryan," I whispered into the darkness, my voice shaky. My heart beat faster, but there was no answer. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was the wind, the old building settling, or just a trick of my mind. But the next night, the whispers came again. This time, I could hear them more clearly, as if someone was standing right next to me. "Emily." I jolted awake, my pulse racing, and I sat up quickly, scanning the room. The air felt heavier, colder. My breath was coming in short gasps. I turned on the bedside lamp, but nothing seemed out of place. I was alone. But then, something caught my eye. A small object on the floor near the doorway. It was my necklace, the one Ryan had given me for my birthday. The one I had buried in the drawer a month ago, too afraid to wear it because it reminded me of him too much. How had it gotten out? I rushed over and picked it up, my hands trembling as I stared at it in disbelief. There was no way it had moved on its own. It must have been placed there, deliberately. My mind raced, my heart thumping in my chest. Suddenly, I felt it. A coldness creeping up my spine, like a shadow moving across the room. I spun around, but no one was there. Yet, I could feel him. Him, Ryan. But he wasn't the same. The air was thick with an energy that I couldn't explain, like he was closer to me than ever, yet also distant. It was as if he was watching me, and I didn't like it. The next few days were worse. More whispers, strange occurrences, objects moving on their own. It wasn't just in the night anymore. It was happening during the day. One afternoon, I was sitting in my living room, trying to focus on a book, when I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind me. I turned quickly, but there was no one there. The room was empty. My heart raced, and I could feel the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I called out, but there was no response. I checked the entire apartment. Nothing. No one. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. Was I really hearing things? Or was something, or someone, messing with me? It was a few days later when I got the first message. It was from Ryan, or at least it looked like it was from him. My phone buzzed late one night as I was trying to sleep, and when I looked at the screen, I froze. "I miss you, Em. I'm still here." I felt sick. How? The last time I checked, Ryan's phone was gone. He was dead. He couldn't be texting me. But there it was, his name on the screen. His words. I tried to ignore it. I turned off my phone and buried it under my pillow, as if doing so could somehow block him out. But deep down, I knew I couldn't escape him. The next day, I went to work, determined to get my mind off things. But even there, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. People would glance at me as I passed, and I could feel their eyes on me in a way that made me uncomfortable. It wasn't just normal curiosity. It was like they knew something, like they could sense it, like they could see Ryan too. It was as if his presence had spread, infecting everything around me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in my bed, waiting for the haunting whispers to come again. But this time, I didn't want to hear them. I didn't want to feel his touch, or feel him watching me from the corners of the room. I didn't want to be haunted anymore. And then, just as I was about to drift off into a restless slumber, the voice came again. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was loud, and it was right next to my ear. "Emily." My eyes shot open, and I turned to face the source of the voice, but there was nothing. Nothing but the darkness of my room. But I felt him. I felt his breath on my skin, the warmth of his presence, the weight of his stare. "Ryan?" I called out in a shaky voice, barely able to breathe. The only response was the faint sound of his voice, a low, mournful tone. "Emily, you called me back." I couldn't speak. The words felt like a cold knife in my chest. I didn't call him back. I didn't ask for this. This wasn't love anymore. This was something darker, something wrong. And I couldn't stop it. I never thought this would be the price of love. The days blurred together after that night. I tried to go back to my routine, work, sleep, eat, but it all felt hollow, as if I was simply going through the motions. My mind was consumed by the whispers, by the heavy feeling that Ryan was never far behind me. I couldn't escape him. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, he was always there, just beyond my reach, watching, waiting. It had been weeks since he first appeared to me in that dream. Weeks since I'd felt the warmth of his touch, his breath on my neck. But it wasn't just dreams anymore. I was seeing him in the waking world too, in glimpses. His shadow flickering in the corner of my eye, the faint sound of his voice in the wind. He was here, but he wasn't. It felt like I was losing my grip on reality. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I needed to understand what was happening, what was happening to me. I decided to go to the one place I hadn't dared to visit since his death, the cemetery. It was late, far past midnight, when I pulled into the darkened parking lot. The moon was barely visible behind thick clouds, and the only sounds were the rustling of the wind and the distant chirping of crickets. The cemetery looked like something out of a nightmare, a sprawling labyrinth of gravestones that seemed to stretch on forever, casting long, skeletal shadows. I stepped out of my car, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to confront the place where Ryan's body lay, cold and lifeless. But I had to. I had to know what was happening. I walked slowly, my footsteps muted on the gravel path. The air was heavy, as if it were filled with the weight of everything that had happened. And then I felt it. A shiver running up my spine, a cold gust of wind that seemed to cut right through me. Emily! I froze. My heart slammed against my ribcage, and I turned around quickly, scanning the shadows. There was no one. The voice had come from nowhere, and everywhere at once, a soft whisper carried on the wind. "Ryan?" I called. My voice barely above a whisper, afraid that if I spoke too loudly, I'd scare him away. There was no answer, just the soft rustling of the trees in the distance. I took another step forward, my hands shaking. "Ryan, if this is you, I need to understand. What's happening? Why are you here?" The silence stretched on, suffocating, until I heard it again, closer this time. "Because you called me back." The voice was louder now, clearer, and I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was unmistakably his voice, but it sounded different, hollow, like something was wrong, like he wasn't entirely himself. I turned to face the gravestone at the center of the cemetery, the one with his name etched into the marble. "Ryan," I said, my voice trembling. "Please, I need to know. Why are you here? Why won't you leave me alone?" For a moment there was nothing. Then, as I stood there, waiting, I saw it. A flicker in the distance, a movement in the shadows. It was Ryan, standing in the moonlight, his silhouette sharp against the darkness. But something about him was off. He looked different. His eyes, once warm and full of life, were now cold, distant. His face was pale, almost translucent, like he was barely holding onto his form. "You shouldn't have called me back, Emily," he said, his voice low, but somehow filled with sadness. "You wanted me, but you didn't realize the price." I took a step back, my mind reeling. "What do you mean? What price?" He looked at me, his eyes filled with a strange mix of longing and something darker, something that made my stomach twist. "Every time you remember me, every time you mourn me, it keeps me here. It pulls me back into this world. But this world isn't meant for me. I can't stay, Emily. Not like this." The wind picked up again, swirling around us, and for a brief moment I saw something in Ryan's eyes. A flicker of panic. "I'm not the person you remember," he said, his voice strained. "I'm changing. I'm becoming something else." I stepped back, feeling my breath catch in my throat. "What are you talking about? What are you becoming?" He looked away, his face twisting with anguish. "I don't know. But every time I come back to you, it's harder to leave. The more you want me, the harder it becomes to escape the pull of this world." I could feel it then, the coldness in the air, the heaviness around me. It was like the very ground beneath my feet was shifting, like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't comprehend. "Ryan, please," I begged, my voice cracking. "I need you to go." I need to move on. I can't keep living like this. His face softened for a moment, and I saw a flicker of the man I loved. I know, Emily, but I don't know how. I can't leave you. Not completely. Every time I try, I get pulled back. I'm trapped here, in this in between. Tears welled up in my eyes. Then what do we do? How do we fix this? He stepped toward me, his form flickering like a fading light. You have to let me go. Truly let me go. But if you do, I'll never be able to return. I won't be able to come back to you, no matter how much you want me. I looked at him, my heart aching with the weight of his words. I had never imagined it would come to this. I had always believed that love could conquer anything, that it could bring people back, that it could defy the boundaries of life and death. But this wasn't love anymore. This was something else, something dangerous, and I didn't know if I could survive it. I never thought this would be the price of love. Ryan's voice lingered in the air as his figure began to fade, leaving me standing there, alone once again. The question was still burning in my mind. Could I let him go? Or would the price of keeping him be far greater than I could bear? The air in my apartment felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in, the silence pressing down on me until I couldn't breathe. I had tried so hard to forget, to push Ryan's presence out of my mind, but the more I tried, the more real he became. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights, it was him. I couldn't escape him. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched, even when I was alone. It had been days since the cemetery, and still, I couldn't shake the image of Ryan, his pale face, his eyes empty and full of sorrow. He was fading, yes, but I knew he wasn't gone, not entirely, and the thought of him lingering, trapped between worlds, was enough to keep me awake at night. That night, I lay in bed, my thoughts a chaotic mess. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside my window. But the peace was fleeting. There was something in the air, something wrong. I heard it again, whispers, soft, like a breath against my ear. But this time, they weren't just whispers. It was as if someone was standing right beside me, their lips brushing against my skin, their voice low and menacing. Emily, I'm still here. I froze. My heart stopped, my blood running cold in my veins. I turned my head slowly, my breath shallow, but the room was empty. The darkness felt alive, pressing in on me from all sides. There was no way this was just my imagination. The whispers were too real. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to scream, to call out for help, but I couldn't move. It was as if my body had been paralyzed, the weight of Ryan's presence pressing down on me. My mind raced. Was I losing my sanity? Or was this something else? Ryan, I whispered, barely able to speak, my voice trembling. The air grew colder. I could feel it now. A chill seeping into the room, wrapping around me like an invisible force. Goosebumps prickled my skin, and I clutched the blankets tighter, as if they could protect me from whatever was coming. And then, the lights flickered. Once, twice, and then they went out completely. The apartment was plunged into complete darkness. I couldn't see anything, but I felt him. He was here. Ryan, I whispered again, my voice barely audible. The temperature in the room dropped even further, and I saw it, a faint glow, like the flicker of candlelight. But it wasn't coming from any source I could see. It was coming from the corners of the room, pooling in the shadows. Slowly, it began to move, and I realized It was him, his form barely visible like a shadow, a silhouette against the inky blackness. My pulse raced, my breath caught in my throat as I watched him materialize. His face was more ghostly than before, pale, almost translucent. His eyes, once filled with warmth, were now empty, hollow pits of darkness. The familiar features of the man I loved were still there, but they were twisted, distorted by something I couldn't understand. "Emily!" His voice came again, but this time, it wasn't full of love. It was cold. It was wrong. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest, a heavy weight pressing down on my chest, suffocating me. My hands were shaking as I reached for the lamp beside my bed. But as I did, it was as if the very light itself recoiled from my touch. The bulb flickered violently, casting long, terrifying shadows across the walls. And then, the room plunged into total darkness once more. I heard his footsteps then, slow, measured, as if he was walking toward me, taking his time, savoring the moment. "You called me back, Emily," he said, his voice now a low growl, the words slipping out like venom. "You brought me here, and now you can't get rid of me." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat felt tight, like something was choking me from the inside. The weight of his presence was so overwhelming, so suffocating, that I felt as though I was being crushed beneath it. Every breath was a struggle. I could feel him getting closer, his cold breath brushing against my neck, his fingers, icy, almost sharp, tracing along my skin. It felt like needles, cold and unnatural. His hand slid down my arm, and I recoiled, the touch sending a wave of panic through me, but his hand didn't let go. "Ryan, stop!" I pleaded, the words escaping me in a hoarse whisper. "Please, you're not real. You can't be. You're dead." The air around me thickened, and I could feel him, his presence suffocating, pressing in on me from every side. His laugh echoed in the darkness, low and hollow, like a wind that carried no warmth. "I'm not dead, Emily. Not anymore." A sudden coldness washed over me, more intense than anything I had ever felt before. I gasped, the chill biting into my skin like ice. And then, I heard it. A low, rumbling sound like the grinding of stone, the creaking of something ancient and decaying. The floor beneath me seemed to tremble, and I realized it wasn't just the air that was changing. It was everything. "Ryan, what are you doing?" I whispered, fear crawling up my spine like a living thing. His shadowed figure loomed over me, his face now mere inches from mine, his breath cold against my cheek. "I'm becoming something more, Emily. You called me, but you didn't know what you were summoning. You don't know what you've done." The temperature in the room dropped even further, and the shadows around us seemed to twist and writhe. The walls closed in, the very space shrinking, as though the apartment itself was being consumed by something darker, something alive. I couldn't escape. I couldn't move. It was as if I was frozen in place, held by some invisible force that kept me there, trapped. Ryan's eyes, those hollow, empty eyes, met mine, and for a split second I saw it. I saw the thing that he was becoming. Something far darker than the man I had loved. Something otherworldly. Something that was feeding on my fear, on my desperate need to keep him close. "You wanted me back," he whispered, "but this is the price. The longer I stay, the more I stay, the more you'll lose yourself. You'll be mine, Emily, forever." And as he spoke those words, a crackle filled the air, the lights flickering violently again. The shadows, began to stretch toward me, reaching, pulling me into the dark, into the abyss. I never thought it would come to this, but I realized, too late, that I had called him back, and now there was no escaping the consequences. I couldn't breathe. I was suffocating, drowning in the cold, unyielding darkness that surrounded me. Ryan, no. It stood there, his hollow eyes boring into me, his presence consuming every inch of the room. The shadows, once familiar, now twisted and writhed around us like living things, as though they were drawn to him, to us. I could feel the room closing in, the walls pressing against my chest, the weight of everything that had happened bearing down on me. "You can't stay, Emily," Ryan's voice echoed through the suffocating silence. "You can't keep me here." "You don't understand the price." I tried to step back, but my legs felt like they were made of stone. I was frozen, trapped in a nightmare of my own making, and I knew it was only a matter of time before I, too, would be consumed. This wasn't the man I had loved. This was something twisted, something ancient and vengeful, and I had called it into my life. "Please," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Please, I don't want this. I want you to leave. I want you to go back. I'll forget you. I'll let you go. Just please, stop." The air grew colder, impossibly cold, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest as I looked into his eyes. The eyes that once held warmth, love, were now nothing but empty voids. He was slipping away from me, but not in the way I had hoped, not in the way I had imagined. "I can't leave, Emily," he said, his voice now more guttural, more wrong. "I can't. I won't. Please, Ryan, I can't do this anymore," I whispered, the tears streaming down my face, the coldness now seeping into my very soul. "I don't know how to let you go, but I have to." I opened my eyes, and for a moment I saw it, a flicker of the man I had loved, my Ryan, beneath the shadow that had taken over him. His eyes softened just for a moment, as if he was trying to remember who he had been. "I never wanted this for you, Emily," he said, his voice breaking. "I never wanted you to be trapped with me." But I saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't just trapped. He was changing, becoming something that was no longer human, something far worse. And as much as I loved him, I knew now that I couldn't save him. I reached out a trembling hand, my chest tight with fear and grief. "Ryan, I'm so sorry, but I have to do this. I can't keep living in this nightmare." The air around me crackled, the darkness swallowing us whole. The shadows pressed in, and I knew this was the moment where I had to choose. "I'm letting you go, Ryan," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the overwhelming weight of the silence. "I love you, but I can't keep you." I stepped back, my legs shaking as I turned to face the shadows, feeling them close in around me. I closed my eyes, bracing for the worst, and then, with one final breath, I whispered the words I knew would sever the bond, the words I knew would break everything. "Goodbye." And then it was over. The weight lifted, the air lightened, the shadows receded. The coldness that had clung to my skin vanished, and for the first time in months, I felt warmth. The room seemed brighter, the oppressive feeling fading into nothingness. When I opened my eyes, the room was still, silent. No flickering lights, no whispers, no shadows, just the quiet hum of the world outside. I was alone, but as I stood there, my heart aching with loss, I realized that I had made the right choice. I had let him go, and I could finally move on. But as I walked toward the door, I felt it. Just a whisper, barely audible, brushing against my ear. I'll always be with you, Emily. And even though the voice was faint, I knew it would never leave me. Some loves are too strong to truly escape. Some ghosts, no matter how far you run, will always find a way back. I've crossed a line I can never uncross. The taste of it still lingers, even though I know I shouldn't want more. I should feel guilty, but part of me doesn't. What are we now? Is there a way back? Or have we destroyed everything? Tell me, am I the only one left wondering?